Hi, and welcome to the ArtsyFartzy Club. My name is Mrs. Johnson, and I am so happy that you are here with me today. We are going to have fun with a drawing and painting lesson, a little bit of texture crayons with a texture plate, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to make some really cute fall cats. If you don't celebrate Halloween, no worries. You don't have to make it a jack-o'-lantern. We can just make it a fall thing. But let's get into what we are going to do today. So what you need, I am using a 12 by 18 piece of paper. You could definitely make this smaller if you only have a 9 by 12 or a computer paper. You can do it smaller. I do recommend that you have a little bit thicker paper than computer paper if you're going to paint with me. But if you decide to just use crayons or markers, that's okay too. And I have my handy dandy. Oh, let's zoom out so you can see what I'm talking about, people. Okay, I have my handy dandy art rag. I have crayons. These are the main color of crayons I'm going to use for the main part of my drawing, but I also am working on the background, and I am going to do the texture plates. So texture plates, I'm going to age myself here. These are my plastic texture plates I have had for a gajillion years. And you can tell that I've had them for forever because they are no longer clear. When I bought them, they were clear. So the plastic is so old that now it is yellow, as cheap plastic does, but they still work perfectly fine. So if you don't have texture, okay, so don't freak out. If you're at home and you're one of my students, you could use a brick wall. You can use the cement outside. You could use a tree. You can use a piece of wood. You can look around. Maybe there's some variegated cardboard that's like bumpy cardboard or something, like a box from Amazon. Bubble wrap probably wouldn't be hard enough, but think about different textures you might actually have around your house that you don't even realize. The not a smooth counter, but if you had like your cabinets have a texture to them, okay, just think about it. Think about the way something feels. So texture is one of our senses, the sense of touch, right? We can see, we can smell, we can hear, we can taste, and we can feel. So I can feel a texture. So if something is rough and versus smooth, that is going to be a texture that will transfer. And we can see these textures visually, and I'm going to show you how that works out later. All right, so I've got that. I've got Sharpie. I've got a pencil, and today I've got a big, well, not big, the big eraser, because we are going to be doing a lot of erasing. And in my watercolor set, I added a big fluffy watercolor brush because I'm going to be doing a wet on wet technique. And with this nice large 12 by 18, you have a big space. And sometimes if you're using this little brush, it can be a little disheartening and take you a while. So if you don't have a big brush like this, another option would be to use a sponge. You could sponge on your water, and that would make things go a little bit faster for you. And then, of course, my handy dandy water bowl, just in case you don't see that. All right, here we go. We're going to start diving right in. So I'm going to grab my pencil, and we are going to get art-tastic. So I'm going to have to be conscious that you can only see a portion of the art today because it is the large piece. Okay. So in about the center-ish, I am going to go ahead and draw an ellipse. My paper is vertical, which means the long way up and down. And I'm going to draw an ellipse shape. And an ellipse is like an oval, only pointier. Okay. So I'm going to just drawing lightly, draw an ellipse. And the ellipse is going to be the top part of my cut open pumpkin. Then I'm going to start drawing in the pumpkin shapes. And I'm going to start in the center because my pumpkin, of course, is perfectly lined up to have a nice big part in the top. And I am going to pretend that it's cut in a way that goes along with the bumps. So we're going to go bump, bump. And at the end of my ellipse, I'm going to make that last bump. Now, if your pumpkin is irregular shaped, no worries, because nature is not perfect. So if that pumpkin gets kind of funny shaped at some point, that's reality. Pumpkins are not perfect. Okay, so bump, bump, bump. There's my pumpkin, basic pumpkin shape. So now from there, we're going to go ahead and continue. Hey, do me a favor, my friends. If you have never been here before, because I always forget to say it. So I got to run my banner. Make sure you take a minute and like my page. That really helps me out. I really appreciate it. And even better, subscribe so I can get those numbers up. I appreciate that so much. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start the cat. Now, remember, I am sketching. These are not permanent lines. Make them light because you will probably erase them later. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to draw a line coming out from my pumpkin in a bump, like a half an oval, okay? The top part of an oval. And now that part, this would be the pumpkin, right? You can't see through the cat. So we're going to erase that later. And this is why we're drawing lightly. Now I'm drawing kind of a circular, wide oval shape. And I'm going to go ahead and draw triangle ear, triangle ear, upside down triangle nose, and this will kind of help me out if I draw that general muzzle shape. That'll help me with a guideline later. I'm going to do kind of a stylized happy kitty. So I did a curved line with an arch, and I'm going to put that eye like he's kind of looking up. He's kind of a precocious pussycat. And last but not least, I am going to draw his tail. Now remember, if you're catching me on the replay, go ahead. If you need to pause, rewind, slow me down, fast forward, whatever you need to do to make this work for you, go ahead and do that. Okay, and his little tail's coming out from behind him. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make this even more fun by adding in his paws. So we're going to go paw and paw, reaching over the edge of that pumpkin. All right. Now, a couple of things I can add to make my artwork even more interesting is a horizon line. So I'm going to draw a horizontal line, but when I hit my pumpkin, I stop and I imagine it continuing, and going through the other side. Okay, so now my pumpkin is closer to me than that horizon line, the farthest line. Now this could be a wall where the wall connects to the floor. It can be where the sky makes that imaginary line where it touches the ground. Okay, but that's dividing those two spaces, and we will be able to create two different color areas, and that helps us to create depth. Okay, depth is making things look closer and farther away, and we want to start creating that illusion, just like overlapping when something is on top of something else. That is giving the illusion, the pause, that his hands are over the rim of the pumpkin. So now here's our fall kitty. You can leave it like this, but if you want to make it Halloween, you can go ahead and add in some eyes, a nose. You could do a mouth, but I just kind of think that adding the mouth is a little suspect because I feel like you would start to see the inside of the pumpkin, the cat, and I don't want to show the bottom of the cat. I want to keep this simple and make it easy on you guys. All right. So I'm going to pull out my Sharpie, and now I'm going to commit to my lines. I was very sketchy and light before, and now I'm going to go, this is it. This is the line, because once I put the Sharpie on, I can't take it back. So be sure and steady with your lines. So when I'm putting down my lines, I don't do the sketchy, line. That marker is not the best. I'm going to move on to a different one. Here we go. This one looks better. All right. And so I'm just going to go ahead and just make that sure line. And remember, I started to make the muzzle, this imaginary muzzle here. And I'm going to go ahead and emphasize that by putting some fur lines. And why don't we go ahead and give our cat whiskers? Odd numbers tend to look good. So 3 or 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and give him his eyes. Now I can color in the pupil of the eye with the Sharpie, or wait till we go ahead and do the crayons and painting later. Up to you. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and draw in his ears. And once again, I'm going to make it look like it's furry. So I'm going to do a little bit of it's not a full-on zigzag, but kind of. Okay. And we can just make it a little irregular so they're not all quite the same. I want to show the pink part of the ear. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some of that fur. All right. Oop. And give some fur to the face. So I'm going to follow that sketch line as my guideline, but make it furry. All right, not too bad. Then I don't like how high this shoulder got, so I'm going to put it down here a little bit. Boop. Boop. We can make some fur on his tail. And some furry little paws. But see how when I'm doing it, I'm committing. I'm not trying to draw lightly with my Sharpie. It's on there. Once it's on there, it's on there. I'm all in. I am going all the way. Okay, we're going to draw the rim of the pumpkin. Lowered it a little bit, so I'm going to lower it a little bit on this side as well. And bump, bump, bump. Oh, I didn't want to bump there. Mrs. Johnson. Okay. The outside of the pumpkin, nice smooth line. Connect to where you're going to make your other line and stop. Now make sure when I'm drawing this line, I connect it. Bam. Stop. Don't let that other line poke through. Nice smooth lines connect in. Bam. Okay, from the edge, making sure that you guys can see. Sometimes I forget to check that you guys can see what I'm doing. Gotta do that every once in a while. All right, now I've committed to that. I'm gonna go ahead and draw in my horizon line. That horizon line doesn't quite look lined up. I'm going to go ahead and check with my ruler, because if you have a ruler that can span your paper, why not? Why not? Help yourself out. Oh, whoopsie doops. Mrs. Johnson. There you go. All right. See, that was lower than that one, and I did not like that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make the triangle. Remember, if you don't celebrate Halloween, just don't put this part in. Keep it fall. Now, I want to show some 3D-ness to my pumpkin. So I'm going to show the side wall on this eye. I'm going to draw a diagonal line, short, then draw up to the point and draw across. Okay. And I will do the same on each triangle. Diagonal line up to that point and then across. And it looks a little odd right now. I'm getting like my eye will play where it'll do the reverse effect, like it's popping out versus going in. But once we put dark in there for the shadow, it'll recess and it'll be fine. So if you're getting some weird eye action where you're like, I don't know if this looks quite right, Mrs. Johnson, it will all be well in the end, I promise. Okay, I feel like I've gotten everything double check. Now, I sure hope that you have a nice big eraser today. If you don't, sure, you can use your little pink eraser. Just make sure it doesn't leave pink lines. And it just might take you a little bit longer. But I'm really going to go to town and erase all these. And I bet you it jiggles the camera. So get ready for an earthquake here, guys. Whee! Hold on to your table. Duck and cover. Go in a doorway, right? All right. Use those muscles. Keep going. I know it's so easy for you to give up. You're like, that line's good. It's okay. But when you take the time to erase all those pencil marks, what are we working on? We are committing to good craftsmanship, right? And craftsmanship is what makes you better than the next guy. I promise. When you take the time to make your art nice and neat, okay, that doesn't mean that you can't be abstract or expressive, okay, but everything's with intention. If I leave sketch lines, that's not intended to be part of my art, right? So then that's just garbage. That's stuff that should not be there. I don't want to have garbage lines on my art. I don't want to have messiness on my art. That's not part of my art. All right, I think I got everything, so I'm going to shake it off. Apologize to your mom for the mess. Sweep it up later. Promise that you will sweep that up or wipe it up with a paper towel and a little bit of cleaner. Damp paper towel will help wipe that up. All right. I feel like I've gotten them all. Double check. I'll have students that go, oh, I got them. And then I'll be like, here, here, here. And they're like, oh, Mrs. Johnson. I'm like, it's all right. Come back. Raise your hand when you're ready. It's better to have to go back through and erase again than have those pencil lines showing through your art. Wonderful. All right. Good job, everybody. Did you do it? Did you get a little workout? Oh, can you see it? Yeah, right there. Nope, that way. There's the muscle. You're going to get a strong muscle just from your erasing. Okay. So I have those texture plates, and you're going to maybe even have a scrap piece of paper to experiment with your textures, because sometimes texture plates do better on one side versus the other side. So I find that a lot of times that they work better on the indent side. So I know that's really hard to explain, and it's going to be hard for you to see on the screen, but this side is not bumpy, and this side is bumpy. And if I go with just the bumpy side, it will show the bump part more than it will show the pattern a lot of times. So I don't know if I can really explain it, but just experiment with which side's better. Okay, I'm going to scoot this up as much as I can so that you can see. Now, because my paper is so large, the texture plate will not cover the entire area. So I'm going to have to color, move my texture plate, and then color some more. You can color different colors. You can color different textures. It's up to you. But what I do recommend, because our pumpkin is going to be in the warm color family, we want to make the background in cool colors. It will help our pumpkin to pop out. That contrast of warm versus cool is going to make those colors play with each other, and they make each other more vibrant. So I'm going to commit to some cool colors. Now, I like to use what I call with my students naked crayons. So this crayon has its clothes on, and when crayons get old or broken, as many do, I throw them into the naked crayon container. So we peel off the wrapper, and these are perfect for doing textures just like this. So I would use my crayon this way, sideways, instead of trying to use the point. If you're using a point, you're not going to get that texture rub that you want. But if I go onto the side, we will definitely see more of that texture. So I'm going to play with this one. Let's see. I don't like the way that looks. I'm going to turn it over. I bet you the other side is going to work better. And I can even use a different shade of green. Now, press hard. We are going to be doing what we call, oh yeah, that side's better. This one's the side that pops out. So that one's much better. And I can even play around. I'm going to do the light green. I'm going to do the dark green. I've got a blue green over here. By doing that, I can create visual interest just by having the different shades of green. I haven't even started painting yet. Okay, I'm doing all of that negative space. The object is our positive space. The background is our negative space. I'm filling in all of that negative space with my cool color of green for the ground. Does it have to be green? No, I mean, I could have done brown or something, I guess. But if we really want to try to make that pop out in a contrasting way, I would recommend those cool colors. All right, better, looking better. Okay, so I'm going to start to do this area. I'm going to use a couple different textures up here, and let's see which one works the best and which way. Pressing hard. Ooh. And I'm going to try this side. Change color. Ooh, maybe even crayon is just better. Yeah, not all crayons are created equal, my friend. That is 100% for sure. This texture is kind of a star pattern. Pressing hard. You want to press hard, not so hard that you don't leave any white paper, but hard so that that wax gets on there and you are committed to having that wax on the paper, because the wax is going to be what resists the watercolor paint. All right, let's try a different texture. Let's see what happens. Let's go in with that other purple again. I could have just done one color. And I did. On the example, I used just the one color, just the one texture, really simple. I was just trying to do it to see how the project would look today. So that's fine too. If you don't have a bunch of different colors and naked crayons, you have one. Kind of this line thing going on. And get some of that blue in here. So what I would normally do as a teacher is I would throw out, 4 or 6 texture plates per table group, and then whatever they come up with, that's what they can use. And I don't care which texture they choose. I love if they experiment with different textures, and you can even do a texture over your texture. And I'm going to put some of this different color into the different areas. I don't have any of this green-blue, or blue-green, I should say, excuse me, over here. I'm going to put them in to make that color incorporate and draw my eye around my art. It'll lead the visual, lead the eye throughout the art. Okay. All right. Now, texture plates are done. Now it's time to work on the main area. So I'm going to go ahead and color portions of my project. And I don't have to commit all the way because I'm going to be coming in with my paint still. So I'm going to think of my crayons like I'm shading. I'm going to put a little bit more into the pumpkin because we're going to talk about going light to dark, but I'm going to use my black crayon to create the shadows. Okay, pressing hard. I want those to show up when we go to paint. So I'm just kind of shading the left side of things. Shade, shade, shade. Shade, shade, shade. Okay, left hand of the paw. I can get into the eye. And we're going to talk about watercolor and how to make colors dull too in a little bit. You're going to learn a lot. There's a lot to learn with this project. You can do it really simple, or we can really get into some art concepts. You are learning. So it's amazing. You know, something as simple as a cat and a pumpkin, and you guys learn so much. You learn so much in one simple project. Okay, I'm just going to shadow a little bit inside the pumpkin, and we're going to let the paint do more of the work. Okay. Now, this being said, I am going to go light to dark on my pumpkin with my crayons. Now, if you are one of my students and you've been following along, you know how to mix orange. We take a primary plus a primary to make a secondary. So what are my primary colors that I use to make orange, guys? Where are you? There you are. Okay, my first colors that I have to make the other colors are red and yellow. They're called the primary colors because I can't take other colors to mix these. I have to have these paint. I have to buy them, and then I can use those to mix the secondary colors. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. First plus first equals a second thing. And that red plus the yellow makes the orange. So if this theory is true, I'm going to go ahead, if it's true, it is true. I'm telling you it's true. I'm going to go ahead and use the yellow to highlight the right side of each of my sections of the pumpkin. Now notice I'm scrabbling. Don't worry. I know I emphasize good craftsmanship all the time, but we're not going to leave it like this. No, no, no. No way, Jose. We are going to come back with the paint, and that's going to fill in those white spaces. So the white spaces, we are allowing for the paint to get into the paper there. Okay. So it's highlighted with the yellow. Then I'm going to come in and I can use either the orange or the yellow orange. If you have a traditional, how many are in this one? Is this the 24 pack? Yes, this is the 24 pack. You should have these colors. So I'm going to go ahead and do the yellow orange. And I'm going to put that next. So you're basically creating a gradient, or you might know the word ombre. Okay, going from light to dark. In this case, going from yellow to orange. Now, I am not going to use red because my pumpkin is not red, but I am going to use a red orange. Okay, see how that is a much redder orange than our yellow orange? And we have gone now from light to dark, creating an illusion of light and shadow. We are just blazing through. Once again, if you need to pause, rewind, even fast forward if you don't want to hear all of this. There we go, guys. Okay, we've done all the things. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color in the nose pink and the ears pink. Excellent. All right. So now I'm ready to do my watercolor. A tip I like to give my students is to do your biggest spaces first. Usually that is going to be the background, and you, one, feel like you are making a lot of progress. Two, you can be a little bit looser in the background and then tighten up when you get to this point. So like that's your practice. And then you get a little bit more serious when you get here. So the very first thing for watercolors is to emphasize the word water. Okay. So water, we're going to get water on our brush. We're going to drop water in each of our paint cells to activate them. Now, I actually already previously activated my paint, but it's not going to hurt to add more because the important word in watercolors is water. I have my fluffy brush. Now, this is where that you could use a sponge to get a sponge damp, and you could press it onto your background. I'm going to take clean water on my fluffy brush. I'm using a fluffy watercolor brush because it collects more water. And the reason that I am going to do the water first is because it's going to help me create a technique called wet on wet. Be a little careful. I was a little sloppy right there, not to get into your cat. And you're like, I don't see anything. Mrs. Johnson, you're a crazy lady. Yes, I am a crazy lady. Yes, you don't see anything happening yet, but the magic will happen, I promise. So I've colored in all of that negative space around my cat. And I'm going to go ahead and use this fluffy brush to do the background since it is such a big space. If I used this little brush, it would take me a really long time. You can do it. I've had students do it when I didn't have big brushes for them, and that's okay. And I'm going to stick to a cool color. So I'm going to go ahead and use a purple. And when I go ahead and get that on there, you should see it kind of puddle and blend. But you also should see, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's so far away. Can I zoom in? No, Mrs. Johnson, you cannot. Can I bring it up to you? Maybe. Let's see, without spilling. No, I'm going to spill. Okay, my dears, let's see. Can you, there it is. Okay, can you see right here and here where the watercolor, and right here, see how it's beading? It's not getting into the paper there because the crayon is there. That's what we call a wax resist. That crayon is going, no, to the paint. It's resisting. Like you resist arrest. Okay. No, you can't take me. The paint or the crayon is resisting the paint. No, you can't paint me. Can't do it. So that is going to allow that crayon to show through. And I know I'm starting a little light with my paint, and that's because I can always put more paint on, but I can't take it back. And sometimes when you put too dark of a paint over a wax resist, it doesn't resist anymore. The paint just covers it right up. So I want it to make sure that it's still showing that crayon through. Okay, so if you see that happening, your paint's too dark, or you don't see that crayon going through, one, you could be rubbing too hard, or two, I didn't tell you how to use your brush. Oh my goodness, Mrs. Johnson, crazy. You have too much paint on your brush. Okay, do you notice, my friends, how I just dab the tip of my brush into my paint and I just lightly tickle it onto my paper? Think of your paintbrush like a ballerina, and it just wants to be on its tippy toes. Because if I smash my brush all the way in to the metal, I'm going to ruin his hair. He's going to end up looking like this with a bad hairdo. Oh, poor Artie. Okay, it's going to smash those bristles, ruin your bristles. You're going to not love your brush anymore. Two, they might start falling out. So gentle, tickle, tickle, tickle into your paint like a ballerina's tippy toes. Paint onto your paper. Don't smash it on your paper. Don't rub on your paper back and forth. I'll get students that rub. They're painting. I'm painting. I'm painting. One, if you get that metal down there, it scratches your paper. That never looks nice. Or two, you can rub a hole right into your paper. So even though I'm using a thicker art paper, it's a heavyweight drawing paper. FYI, I use a 90-pound drawing paper because I can do watercolor on it and it stays pretty good, and it's multi-purpose. I can draw on it, I can paint on it. Okay. And there we go. Now, if I want to kind of make a cool illusion, I might grab some of my blue and get into here with that blue and kind of make it pop, make that cat pop out of the drawing. Get more blue. Okay, we always can grab more. This area isn't as wet. All right. Now, see how that's kind of almost highlighting it? It's featuring that cat. And we're creating kind of a gradient again where it's going the darker near the cat to lighter outside the cat to the lighter purple. And let those colors bleed together. I can get more water to kind of help it bleed together. Yeah. There we go. If it gets too wet, your paper starts to ripple. What you gonna do? Try not to do that. Okay, I'm going to take my rag, dry around my table because I need to move up my art so that you can see the bottom area. Still pretty wet, so I don't want it to bleed into my cat. Boop, boop, boop. Here we go. Scooty, scoot, scoot, scoot. There we go. All right, so now at the bottom, I'm going to use a green, just right in my green. Making it really watery. Can always add more green in, but it's a little bit harder to take it back. And then you guys kind of see when you do those big spaces, you make a lot of progress really fast. You kind of see your art coming together. Makes you happy. Go edge to edge. Don't leave the edge of your paper blank. Every piece of your paper should be treated equally. Every piece of your paper is an artwork. Every piece of your paper is important. Don't make the corner of your paper sad by ignoring it. Okay? Your paper might cry if it doesn't get treated fairly all the way around. And I'm going to put a little bit of like a shadow by putting in the blue at the bottom. Starting out lightly. Can always add more blue. And letting it, just let that bleed in together. And it creates like these delicious lines of veins of the paint bleeding into the other color. So much more visually interesting than just doing a solid line. Nice. Fun. Okay. Now, my dears, I'm going to switch over to my little brush. And I'm going to do kind of what I did with the crayon with my brush. I'm going to go yellow. But watch. I want to start getting that orange in there. And then go all the way to the edge with your orange. Oopsie doops. Getting a little bit of that blue in there. That can happen if you touch the wet area. No worries. Get a little bit of the paint up with a paper towel. And if it bleeds in, it's not the end of the world, guys. A little bit of red. And I want that red to bleed into the orange. Okay, so kind of see how it's melting into each other. And come back in, true up that orange a little bit more. Yeah, fun. Okay, next. Now we do it again with the next row. A little bit of yellow. Get that orange in there. The idea is not to have it all yellow. It's supposed to be a highlight, and yellow on yellow is not very interesting, is it? So you still want that yellow crayon to show through. So you got to let your orange bleed into that area. Okay, trying to get up to my shape, but not into my shape. Get some of that red to bleed in, creating the illusion of light to dark. Oop. Okay. I'm always changing my water. Dab, dab, dab into the water. Washing it. I'm changing my water. Washing out my brush. Changing my color. I wash my brush really well. And I like to grab water. Every time I get into that watercolor paint, I'm usually grabbing more water because the emphasis on watercolors is the water. We want that water. That's what's going to give us that watercolor effect. All right, see how right here, can you see this part in here where the crayon is resisting that orange, and here where the crayon is resisting the paint? It creates this visual texture that just makes the pumpkin so much more interesting than if I had just booped on the paint. It's more fun this way. It's more interesting to see. Okay. Painting in the orange. Want that orange to go across the whole shape before I come in with the red. Boop. Got the red. So I hope you guys are doing well. My littles started school. And if you've started school, I hope you are enjoying your new teachers and your new friends. My red's bleeding a little bit. Now, here, I should explain what I'm doing to you guys so you understand. Okay, rinse off my brush. I'm going to dry it. I am collecting the red that's bleeding over with my brush. Wipe off my paintbrush again. Collect that red. Okay, my brush is sucking it right up. And then see, it's not such a big deal. And it still looks cool. Like, it's still cool. Don't fret. Don't sweat the small stuff, guys. Art is fun. Mistakes happen. We get messy. But I take chances. And therefore, I am an artist. I can create. I can learn from my mistakes and do better next time. Okay. Getting that orange all the way to the edge, and then I'm going to come back in, creating that gradient or ombre effect. A little bit of red on that side. Letting them bleed together. Oh no, it's bleeding into my yellow. No worries. Suck it up with your brush. I can always come back with more yellow later if I want to highlight that area again. Get some more orange in there. Too much yellow. Not loving it. Not loving it. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do my cat. A little bit of that yellow's getting in there. Now, if the brush, it doesn't seem like it's enough, you can go in with your paper towel. And then I might come back in a minute when my orange is more dry, and I might go in with the purple or the blue again. Okay, so to have the black show, I don't want to paint too darkly with my black. Once again, you always can add more paint, but it's hard to take it away. So I'm going to start out more like a gray. Okay, see how it's really watery? If I do it too dark, it's not going to show up. So I can lighten it up by adding more water. I want that wax resist to show through. A little bit. I could see that one coming. Boop. Oh, Mrs. Johnson, rinse your brush. All right. So trying to move quickly so you guys can see the end results. So I'm curious, how many of you guys, speaking of school, I was thinking about making some buttons for my store. And I'm just curious, how many of you guys put buttons on your backpacks? I used to do that when I was a kid. My daughter has some, but I don't know. Is it just a thing, or do all kids do that now? Now, if you want to make sure that your art's not going to bleed like mine is, let it dry. Take the time in between the layers and let it dry. I don't have that luxury because I'm trying to get it all done. I would probably make this a 2-day project, to be honest, with my students. They would probably draw and trace the Sharpie one day and then paint on the second day. All right. Can always come back in, do more layers. Go away, blue. Cover it up with a little bit more black. It's not bleeding into my art. Awesome. Okay. Now, I said I was going to show you about blending or dulling colors. And that's going to be for the pumpkin area. So I am going to do a really light orange here. It's going to play with that yellow wax resist, giving us a little bit of texture, but filling in those white spaces. Now, last but not least, I'm going to probably do crayon in the eye. I could do paint in the eye, either or. But I'm going to do these shadow areas. So I'm going to start with orange. And you're going to be like, that's a really weird choice. Your pumpkin's orange. Why would you do that? Well, my dears, because I'm going to dull my orange with its complement. So when you mix in watercolor two complementary colors, they become muddy or dull or neutral in the middle. So in theory, if you did them in equal parts, they should make gray, but it doesn't exactly happen that way. But I'm going to take some of the blue and I'm going to start to mix that.